Hey, this is Kirsten Sire, CEO and founder of LRT Sports. I am here today with Olivia, and we're going to be talking about track and field. And Olivia, if you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll get going.
Yeah, hi guys. My name is Olivia Horgan. I run cross country, indoor track, and outdoor track for the George Washington University. In track, my events are primarily long distance, so we're talking anything upwards of a mile, but specifically the 5K and the 10K. So those are really specific distance events, but I've been in track and field for over 8 years now, so I have some knowledge on the sport, and I'm happy to talk to everybody today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So first and foremost, if you are a track and field athlete that is in high school and you're even thinking about being recruited to the college level, what are some of the steps that you need to take as far as just preparing yourself to be able to get recruited? And what I mean by that is, do you need to be on high school? Do you need to be on club teams? And if so, or do you need to be running certain events? And if so, what should you be doing? To kind of even sign up for a club team or anything else?
Yeah, so that's super important. And one of the great things about track actually is that it can all be based around your times. And as long as you can get into a meet and run a time, that is universal across all things. So it's not like you have to go to a certain game or be seen by certain scouts. Track makes it easy in that you have a time. So yes, you are going to want to join some sort of team. But a lot of the times it is just the high school team. So if you want to join your high school track team, that will give you the necessary steps to compete on a level high enough to get recruited. So you can get recruited out of basically any state meet, even any pre-state meet, just as long as you have the times. There are a decent amount of club teams, and I know especially for people that are doing multi-events, so sort of the shorter sprints and the jumps, people tend to benefit more from those club teams that are more specific to that and have the coaching for it. But really, when it comes down to getting recruiting, you just need to get your times, your marks out there. And a high school program can do that. A club program can do that. There are AAU circuits for track and field. So you can start to do that early. But a lot of it comes down to the high school competition. There are high school nationals hosted by New Balance in the indoor and the outdoor seasons that are great to get high level competition. But again, as long as you have that fast time or good mark from any sort of meet, that's basically your tool that you want to use first.
Amazing. And then that being said, as far as track and field, is it true that, or is it, something where you're running your certain events in high school and then you're kind of continuing that in college, or do you see people transitioning to different events in college?
Yeah, so a lot of people stay within the general grouping of what they're doing. If you're a sprinter, you're likely not going to move to distance events once you go to college. And a coach kind of recruits you knowing what events you do. But if you're somebody that focuses on the 100-meter in high school, you may go to college and find that your college coach really wants to develop you as a 200-meter runner or even a 400-meter runner. Same thing goes for distance. You might go in saying, oh, the mile is my event. But as you get exposed to a college coach and they really see what you're best at, they might want to move you up to something like the 5K. But you can generally expect that you're going to stay within your discipline. So people that run track will know that if your jumps, you're going to stay within your jumps and sprints. Maybe if you're obviously weight team, so if you're doing throwing stuff, college coach is going to throw you into a running event unless it's something that you show a lot of promise in. And then as a distance runner, you are going to expect to probably step up a little bit in college and do a little bit more as your training increases. But as far as general event groups, yeah, you can expect that your coach will understand what you are doing and keep you within that general group.
Awesome. And then are there any certain websites that track and field athletes are using just to see or compare themselves to other runners? Obviously, you can go on any athletics websites and see the results from meets and what certain athletes are running. But is there anything that's kind of specific to track and field with just maybe seeing rankings of other recruits that are kind of in the upcoming classes with them or behind them?
Yeah, for sure. So there's a website called milesplit.com, and mile split, each state has their own mile split website. So for me, I'm from Massachusetts, it was called Mass Mile Split, but every single sport has their own, every single state has their own. And it'll show rankings of events in top 5 in the state, and it'll also have basically all the results compiled into one place of every high school event happening on a given weekend or during any season. So Mile Split is a great place also because it will have athlete profiles and it'll track your results throughout the years and pretty much have every high level meet on there. So it's a great place to look back and see all of your results. I think this website at this point, a lot of it is paid content, but I think it's a reasonable subscription. But that's probably your most comprehensive database to see rankings, your own times. They also have a bunch of track-specific articles about what's going on in high school, cross country, and track and field. So MileSplit is definitely a great resource. FlowTrack is another place, but that's more for follow-up kind of video interviews. And then a free place to access sort of rankings and then your own personal results in a compiled list is athletic.net. So I'd say between those 3 websites, you should have a pretty comprehensive idea of what's going on in terms of rankings and your own results.
Awesome. And since you run indoor, outdoor, cross country, and track and field, what is your season like? Are you competing all year? And do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so when you get to the college level, if you're a distance runner, you likely are going to run cross country, indoor track, and outdoor track. If you're a track runner, you're going to do indoor and outdoor track. So cross country runs August to November. The national championship, I think, is in mid to late November. So you're at about 3 months there. And for that, we are in the 20 hours a week of practice. So you're practicing pretty intensely during that time. A lot of teams will take sort of a downtime in November, December. And that's a time where you're still practicing, but you're training, and it's a lighter load. You're doing finals for most of it. And then come January, indoor track starts. So indoor track runs from January, and then I think the national championship is mid-March. So you'll again be training intensely for those months. Whether you're a sprinter, throws or jumps, or a distance runner, you will be competing throughout those months to peak in mid-March for championship. And then most teams that I've heard of just roll right into spring track kind of as one big season extension thing for the entire spring. So you will continue training throughout the month of March, and then a lot of teams start competing at the end of March, and then they compete through May until the national championships are mid-May for outdoor track. So if you run cross country, it ends up being basically the entire school year. If you're running track, it spans the entire spring semester. But I think if you're doing all 3 seasons, coaches really do understand that, and they keep it really manageable, and it kind of keeps you on the same schedule throughout the whole year. So if you find that intimidating, it's really not. I found it works great, and it's pretty well spread out across, as I said, these different months. So it works well.
Awesome. And then, for track and field, I feel like it's a little bit different because you are able, it doesn't matter where you are, as far as recruiting, it doesn't need to be in a highly accessed recruitable area because you can kind of, like you said, enter meets and kind of do things differently. So do you see that people are like verbally committing too early, or there's any sort of like pressure to be in any sort of division or anything with like egos on the table as far as that's concerned? And what have you realized through your own recruiting process, as well as any like teammates or friends that you have, as far as any of those pressures that recruits might be going through right now?
Yeah, so something interesting about track and cross country is that a lot of the times you don't have people committing early, or even with the possibility of committing early, because coaches don't like to talk to recruits that are younger than, let's say, juniors, because I think pretty consistently across all events in track, you have huge incremental improvements with age, or sometimes in the case of girls, you have actually people getting worse with age. But due to these things, coaches really don't like to see what you're doing until you're a junior, and they like to see a nice progression. So in terms of that, if you have people that are saying, oh, this coach is looking at me, and maybe you're a sophomore and people are starting to say, oh, I wonder what kind of college I'm looking at. In my opinion, that's way too early, because coaches like to see, again, at least 2.5 years of progression to see how you're doing. And then in terms of divisions, in track, there's not a huge amount of talk about I'm going D1, I'm doing this. I think running in college is more of the big deal. So I think less than other sports, there's banter about what division you're going to, but definitely kids start talking about it junior year, what they're more interested in. And that's a great time for coaches, again, to see what you've done so far. And then it's a good time to start keeping coaches updated about your progress. So I'd say junior year is a great time. I think that's when I started talking to coaches as well. And I think for them that was best, because I could say 2 years ago I was at this point, and then next month, maybe in 2 months, I'm hoping to achieve that. And it's really great for coaches to either see you follow through, or for you to be able to communicate with them what's going on with your training and your performances.
Awesome. And then, is there anything else that you feel like you wish that you knew about either college, track and field, and cross country? I keep missing that. But is there anything that you wish that you knew looking back on your whole experience as you were a recruit?
Yeah, so I think one of the things I got lucky, but I wasn't really focusing on, is that with track and cross country, a coach's style and looking back at how a coach has developed certain athletes is super important to look at in your recruiting process. And I didn't do this personally, but it kind of worked out in my favor, in that my coach is really good at taking not the top talent, but girls that are talented and really developing them as athletes. And a bunch of the girls on my team have had this incremental success every single year. So going back, I got lucky because that happened to happen to me. But going back, I really would have looked at coaches that don't just take the top talent and churn out things, but people that look at girls and have them develop over time. So I'd say look at a coach's personality, look at a team's personality, just sort of see how girls are doing, because running, or boys in any case, because running is one of those things where things can go really right, but things can also kind of go really south very quickly, because it is an individual-based sport and times are so telling that it's easy to see when there's a negative trend. So again, just hoping for some sort of program where it looks like people are improving. If you talk to the people on the team, it seems like people enjoy the process. Just sort of get yourself in that environment of improvement, because that's going to go a long way in college.
Awesome. And then I think, last question is just having to do with outreach and emailing college coaches. First and foremost, what do you recommend? Obviously, GPA, SAT, all that kind of stuff you have to put in your email, but what track specific things should you be putting in to your email? I know I've asked you that before, but we'll just reiterate it again. And then also just, a general topic I always like to touch on is just like the fact that people need to be emailing more college coaches than they think they should be emailing. So do you want to talk about those 2 points?
Yeah. So in your email, you definitely want to include, like you just mentioned, the academic stats. And then I would recommend putting in your top PRs. So in high school, I think I ran the mile and the 2 mile primarily. So I put those in, as well as my cross country 5K PR. And then another great thing to add is any races that you've won. So because you can sometimes be in maybe a league that's less competitive, so your PRs might not be as good because they might get better if you had greater competition. But just if you put in, oh, I've been league champion 6 times, that will go a long way with the coach, because it shows you know how to compete, you're winning. So any major races that you've won, I might include. And then if you've had some sort of jump, let's say from sophomore to junior year, you dropped 20 seconds off your mile time, I would include that. Say maybe like 2016 mile PR was a 5:30, and then 2017 was a 5:10. That would be a great thing to see in terms of progression. And then as for emailing coaches, I think you only realize it, well, a lot of people realize it in retrospect, but it's not going to hurt to just send off that one email and see what kind of coaches respond. Again, you never know if a coach responds and then you look deeper into the team and you see that you really like it. I think that if you get too caught up in looking at specific teams and saying, well, I don't know if I have a place on that team. I mean, a lot of the times I see it with my own team. Girls kind of come out of all different places. So it's really just great to kind of get your name in the mix. And with track, you can see the times, they're right there. So there's no harm in emailing the coach and just putting that out there. Again, yeah, there's no harm in doing it. So why not?
Totally agree with you. Yeah, that's why I like track and field, because it's so numbers driven. So it's just more, it doesn't matter where you are, what you're doing, it just matters what your results are.
Exactly.
So I love that.
Literally just a few quick numbers on the screen and you can send it off and that's your shot. And,
yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. And this was awesome. So thank you. And I will talk to you later.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye.